This is attorney Stephen J. Goralski, attorney at Military Law. This video is to address a comment on the administrative separation overview video. The comment was, what if you are NJP'd and ADSEP for lying? So without more context than that, I'll try my best to give light to course of action to take, how do you address it at NJP, how do you address it at ADSEP, and then go from there. So if you're accused of lying and they want to NJP you, the first thing you want to do is you want to request the evidence that they have against you so that you can consult with an attorney. And you get that evidence, and then you go and you speak with an attorney, and they'll review that evidence and advise you. So they'll look to see if there's any statements. They'll look to see, what evidence does the command have to NJP you for lying, okay? Now, based on that advice, based on that evidence and that advice, ultimately it's your decision on whether to accept the NJP or deny the NJP. Keep in mind, the standard at NJP is preponderance of the evidence. More likely than not, 51%. So if you decide to accept the NJP and you go before your commanding officer, and he reviews the evidence, and if you choose to make a statement, he'll hear what you have to say. He ultimately decides whether he believes, by a preponderance of the evidence, whether or not you lied. Okay. Now, if you were to deny NJP, you could get a reprimand, for example, if you're a Marine, a 6105, or you could be sent to court-martial. Okay, so let's just say for these purposes, you accept NJP. So you accept NJP, you go before the man, and he, says you're guilty and punishes you. Okay, now punishment can be, it depends on rank, but for most individuals, it would be 60 days restriction or 45 days restriction with 45 days extra duties, reduction in rank, and forfeiture of half month's pay for 2 months. So, those are the maximum punishments at NJP. And it also depends on rank. If you're a higher rank, some of those punishments aren't available. But go to NJP, get NJP'd, do your punishment, and now you're facing administrative separation. So depending on what what they're administratively separating you for, and what characterization of service would dictate whether or not you get an administrative separation board. So if you're notified of separation for lying, basically false official statement, you might be administratively separated under COSO, Commission of a Serious Offense. If you have multiple instances of misconduct, you might be separated for a pattern of misconduct. Okay. Now, depending on the recommendation, the recommendation of characterization of service from the commanding officer, and how many years you have in, would dictate whether or not you get an administrative separation board. Okay, so if you have less than 6 years in and they're recommending an other than honorable, then you would have a right to an administrative separation board unless you waive that right. Okay, but if you have less than 6 years in and the commander is recommending a general under honorable conditions, then you would not have a right to a board. Okay. Now, if you have over 6 years in, regardless of what the recommendation is, whether that be other than honorable or general under honorable conditions, you would have a right to a board. Okay. Now, at the board, what you'd want to do is, you'd want to have people testify on your behalf saying that you're a truthful person. especially if you're being administratively separated for lying. Okay, so what does a board look like? A board, there's 3 individuals that make up the board. Okay, there is an 04. Okay, that's the board president. Then there's an 01 to 03. That's another individual on the board. And then there's typically an E7 or higher. Okay, and those 3 individuals make up the board. And they have to make, 4 recommendations, up to 4 recommendations. Number 1 is basis met. So do they believe by preponderance of the evidence that you committed the offense for which you're being sent to administrative separation for? For example, lying. Do they believe by a preponderance of the evidence that you lied? If that's yes, then basis is met. Then they go on to the second recommendation. What is, or should we separate or retain this Marine or this service member? If they decide to retain, then that person just continues on with their career. Goes back to the beginning, continues working. If they decide to separate, then they go on to the third recommendation. What is this individual's characterization of service? Is it honorable? Is it general, under honorable conditions? Or is it other than honorable? That's the third recommendation. And then finally, the fourth recommendation is, should this separation be suspended for up to 12 months? And basically that would mean if they did, recommend separation, if they did recommend suspension for 12 months, that would basically mean that you'd be like on a probation period for 12 months. Any other misconduct, you'd be separated immediately due to already having a board and your separation being suspended. Now, these recommendations go up to the separation authority, and the separation authority can give you no worse than the recommendations of the board, unless he goes to, higher. For example, for the Marine Corps, it would be, the Secretary of the Navy. So if the separation authority wants to give, something worse than what the board recommended, he or she has to go up to the Secretary of the Navy. That typically doesn't happen. A majority of the time, the separation authority, the CG, is going to take the recommendations of the board. Now, going to the board, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get character reference letters talking about your conduct and performance, and also seeing if individuals are willing to testify on your behalf. If you're being administratively separated for lying, you would want to get people that believe you're a truthful person, and you'd want those people to write statements and also to testify at the board, if they're available, that not only are you a good worker, is your conduct good also, but also that you're a truthful person, and also that your reputation in the community is that you're a truthful person. And that would help, counter, the evidence that the government may have that you're untruthful, that you lied. Again, it all depends on, the specific facts of the case. That's about all I have. If you have any more questions, feel free to schedule a consultation and subscribe.